Christianity and Islam are often referred to as religions of the book because each has a religious text at its centre. So for Judaism, the religious text is the Torah. For the Bible, so for Christianity, the religious text is the Bible, and for Islam, the religious text is the Quran. The Torah literally means teaching. Bible comes from the word biblios, which means books, and the Quran means recitation. So clay tablets, papyrus scrolls, and animal skills have all been used as writing surfaces before the codex was invented. And these were folded sheets sewn together, bound between boards. So over here we have a Torah that's been donated or loaned to us from the Jewish Museum of Australia. We have a mantle and a yad. So I'll just explain very briefly about the Torah. So the 5 books of Moses were given to the Jewish people as they were wandering the deserts of Mount Sinai over a period of 40 years. The Tanakh is the term used to refer to the whole of Jewish scripture. The Torah is a part of the Tanakh. So in regards to the Torah, the laws, these laws govern an individual's relationship with God and with others. The Sefer Torah is handwritten on parchment made from an animal that is slaughtered in a kosher manner. And the scribe must be a man of piety and an individual who has undergone a ritual washing.
All right. So in the Torah, there are 613 divine precepts. We call them mitzvot, upon which Jewish law is predicated, which is what we call the written law. Yeah. Now, some of those laws, for example, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, etc., are often not meant to be taken literally. So therefore, rabbis throughout the ages, particularly in the time of the Mishnah and Talmud, debated some of those laws, and their debates and writings, which we refer to as the oral law, led to variations or deeper understandings of some of the laws. So we call that rabbinic literature as well. And still today, there are rabbis who will debate points of law. For example, in the areas of bioethics, euthanasia, abortion, etc. As we know, Jewish law needs to constantly evolve. In fact, the term in Hebrew for Jewish law is actually called halakha, which means to move, movement, because of the fact that Jewish law needs to constantly evolve, not to change, but to evolve. Torah is what we call, Torah is everlasting. We cannot change it, it's immutable, but we can adapt to modern times. So I suppose it's a combination of both.
And I'm looking at David here for guidance to make sure that I'm saying only what is correct. So the New Testament took only 50 to 75 years to write?
Probably complete by 100 AD or at the latest 110 AD.
So Bibles come in many forms. We have papyrus scrolls, handwritten codices, printed books, online versions, and the early manuscripts did not have punctuation or word division, so it took someone that was very highly trained to actually to read the Bible. Sometimes in places the Bible was inaccessible because it was expensive, and other times in places it was readily accessible and very inexpensive, so depending on what time and place that you happened to be in. Over 1 million copies of the Bible being sold every year. And as we mentioned before, the word Bible comes from the Greek word biblios, which means books. But the word biblios comes from the ancient city, Biblios. And basically, Biblios was the official supplier of paper products throughout the ancient world.
If you go to Psalm 47 in the King James Version and you read 47 words in, you come to shake. And if you read 47 words in from the other end of Psalm 47, you come to spear. It's just a...
I think it's...
Can I say something about
Of course
these
you can
Bibles?
say whatever you want.
Yeah, look, these two Bibles that are here are really quite interesting because the King James Version would be the next one on. This is Queen Elizabeth's, which is a translation largely by Tyndale, and Tyndale was one of the first English translators. This is King Henry's version, which he mandated to go into every parish church in 1541. And if you could see the front cover, there's a big picture of King Henry standing there at the front. He imposed his authority on the churches by publishing this Bible. 5 years before this Bible was done, Martin Luther completed his German Bible, which was at the forefront of the Lutheran Reformation in Germany, which we're celebrating this year the 500th anniversary of, since 1517. So these two books have an interesting place within that printing history. If you go to 1450, Gutenberg's first book that he ever printed was a Latin Bible. So it's an interesting history with... and just one step more, the Codex, which is what we call a book rather than the scroll, was a Christian invention because they needed it, because their liturgy, rather than being sequential as the reading of the Torah is, Christian readings in church jump all over the place. So they invented the book way of using it so that they could flip from one point to another. So that's just...
Thank you. Quran Muslims believe to be the words revealed by God through Angel Gabriel to Prophet Muhammad 1400 years ago. So Muslims believe that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, received the first revelation at the age of 40, and this was about year 611. These revelations continued to come in intervals over a period of 23 years, and the revelations stopped about 81 days before Prophet Muhammad's death. Prophet Muhammad was illiterate, so he would actually memorize the verses and then go to his companions who would then record them. The Quran is not written in chronological order. The Quran is often referred to as rhythmic prose and epic poetry, and those of you who had the honour of listening to David and Brett and to Sheikh Alat, you would have heard Sheikh Alat recite the Quran in a very melodious manner, and it makes it very easy to memorise. So there are millions of Muslims around the world who have memorised the Quran, and this practice has not stopped for 1400 years. I found something very interesting, that one of the oldest fragments of the Quran existing in the world was actually found by the University of Birmingham in 2015, and they actually didn't realise they had this Quran, a fragment of a Quran in their collection for a century without even realising it. And radiocarbon dating found it to be 1370 years old, and it was written on goat or sheep skin. So early Qurans were written on parchments, stones, leaves, and even shoulder blades of camels. The Quran has been translated into hundreds of different languages. Sadly, some of these translations are not that authentic. That is why Muslims are encouraged to learn Arabic so they can read the Quran from its original source. Muslims believe that the Arabic, the letters of the Quran, the words in the Quran have not changed in 1400 years. So the Arabic is the Quran. Anything else is a mere translation and does not do justice. The first English translation was completed in 1734, and this was littered with errors. I wanted to talk just very briefly about the illumination of Qurans. If you've ever seen a Quran that's venerated with gold leaf and azure blue. Has anyone ever seen that kind of manuscript? You usually see the Persian manuscripts are renowned for them. And one thing I found very, very fascinating was that the ink, the recipe for the ink, is actually passed down from generation to generation via poetry, because the Persians fixated on poetry so much. So this particular Quran over here, and there's another one over there, is part of the Michael Abbott collection that was donated to the State Library Victoria in 2012. And I'd just like to share one verse from the Quran that really encompasses why we're here today. And it says, this is really hard to read. We gave Jesus the gospel containing guidance and light as a confirmation of the Torah. So in the Quran, chapter 5, verse 46, the Quran is recognising the Gospel, the Bible, and the Torah. Some similarities between the three books. Obviously, Angel Gabriel is a key figure in all three texts. In the Hebrew Bible, Gabriel appeared before Prophet Daniel to explain a dream that he received, a vision that he received. In the New Testament, the angel Gabriel appeared before Zechariah, foretelling of the birth of a child. And angel Gabriel appears a few times in the Quran, and also, obviously, when Muhammad received the revelation. All three religious books contain the names and stories of many prophets that many of you will be familiar with. You may even be named after some of these prophets. Prophets like Adam, Noah, Lot, David, Jonah, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, and Jesus. Many stories are shared throughout the three religious texts: the story of the Great Flood, the oppression of the Jewish people by Pharaoh. And finally, I'd like to end on some of the parallel teachings and verses. In Matthew 5, verse 44, love your enemies, be good to them. In the Quran, repel evil with good, you will turn an enemy into a friend. In the Hebrew scriptures, in Exodus 20, thou shalt not have any gods before me. And the Quran states, do not associate any other deity with God. Exodus also states, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not have bear a false witness. The Quran and New Testament also say the exact same things. In the Quran, in 25, verse 63, and the servants of God are those who walk on the earth gently, and when the ignorant address them, they say to them, peace. And Matthew 5:5, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. And in the Old Testament, you'll also find very similar teaching as well. I wanted to talk, just finish off by talking about some of the challenges that adherents of these faiths have in terms of engaging with texts in modern society. And I feel more comfortable giving a sort of a case study from the Muslim perspective. And we often hear reference to the violent verses in the Quran, for example. Now, when we study the science of hermeneutics, the study of interpretation of religious text, the most important thing to take into account is historical and social and political context. So, for example, the 1400 years ago, when Muslims first started out in Arabia, they were a very small, weak group, and there was a very large, powerful group of pagan Arabs. The pagan Arabs used to bury alive female babies. They used to worship 360 statues. The Muslims did not approve of these customs, and Prophet Muhammad, the first thing he did was to try and preach there was only one God, and the true God was unseen. And Prophet Muhammad tried to preach the equality of males and females, and tried to ban the barbaric practice of female infanticide. The pagan Arabs didn't appreciate the fact that these Muslims had tried to challenge their tribal practices. So for a period of 13 years, the pagan Arabs persecuted and tortured the Muslims just for being Muslim. And for 13 years, the Muslims patiently persevered. They were not permitted to shed one drop of blood. They had to be completely passive. 13 years. After 13 years, Muslims believe verses were revealed in the Quran permitting the Muslims to fight and kill the disbelievers. Who are the disbelievers the Quran is referring to? Not the non-Muslims of today, the pagan Arabs of 1400 years ago. So the Muslims went to battle, soldier against soldier. Many Muslims died. Prophet Muhammad stated they are martyrs. They have gone to paradise. These Muslims did not kill innocent women, children, and non-combatants.
And
but I want
when
to.
They are attacked.
Yes, yes.
So no one incident when the Prophet ordered his followers to attack any group.
That's right.
Or to force them to become Muslim. Actually, they started to attack the Muslims. So it's never mentioned in the history that Prophet ordered the companions to attack any group because they worship the idols or anything. He never ordered them to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what we see extremists take verses out in isolation, from all three faiths, take verses out in isolation, and if I may refer back to the Quran, when these extremists take these verses out in isolation, they actually ignore the invocations to peace that come before and after these particular verses that permit fighting. So you will find a verse that states, but if you kill one innocent person, it is as if you have killed the whole of humanity. Chapter 5, verse 32. You'll find another verse that says, God does not love those that are unjust, but if the enemy retreats, you must retreat as well. So it's really important that we
don't get carried away by the divisive rhetoric of certain politicians, and we don't take things out of context. But I might ask Sheikh Ale if there's anything you wanted to add about this.
So when the Quran is being produced, because it was said that it was produced in from various different physical sources, right? Like in parchment scrolls. So when the Quran is being written or produced, if there's an error found later, what is done about the error?
The way that the Quran was written, they used to. We have, I memorized the whole Quran, so we have a chain, something called a chain. The person who memorizes the whole Quran has a chain toward till the Prophet. So I learned Quran from my Shaykh, and my Shaykh learned from that Shaykh, and that Shaykh learned from until he reaches the Prophet, peace be upon him. So when the companions wrote the Quran, this started to happen because there was companions who were dying in the battles, and they tried to protect the Quran from being changed. And God mentioned in the Quran that He promised to protect the Quran from being changed. So those companions sat together and they brought all the memorizers of the Quran and they started to write the whole Quran. And there was no differences between what this person says and this person says, I heard this from the Prophet in this way. The other person next to him, he says, yes, I heard it the same. So they all agree on one verse that this is correct. I heard it from the Prophet in this way. That's why they acknowledge and admit this verse of the Quran that it should be written in this way.
Hillel were, I suppose, more contemporary. The school of Shammai were very, very rigid and strict when it came to the law. And the Talmud recounts a story of a stranger coming up to Shammai and saying to him, Rabbi, can you please teach me the whole Bible while standing on one leg? And the Talmud says that Shammai boxed him in the ears, basically saying, what are you wasting my time for? Clearly that's impossible. And the man went away and then went up to Rabbi Hillel and said to Rabbi Hillel, Rabbi, would you please teach me the whole of Scripture standing on one leg? And it recounts beautifully that Hillel invited him in, he embraced him, and he said, my son, the following biblical verses will help you with your quest. And he said, V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your neighbor, your friend, like you love yourself. And the rest of the Bible is mere commentary. And I think that's a very beautiful message, isn't it? Really, that the fact that we come together as one. And if we practice really those words where we understanding of one another's similarities and embrace one another's differences as well, I think that really comes as a way to unify all people.
Equality between males and females, the word jihad, and these serious issues, even those people who kill in the name of Islam and name of religion, they use these words, and as my dear sister Sherene mentioned, they take these words out of context. And actually the main message of the Prophet came to equal between men and women, no slavery, everyone is equal, different races, different religions, a rich tribe, a poor tribe, they're all equal in the sight of God, and finally to invite everyone to the oneness of God. Some people may refuse to worship God, but the main things that Islam called for is equality between people, and everyone has the freedom. This is mentioned in so many verses of the Quran, to respect the religion of the religions, all the religions, and people have freedom to worship God in their own way. They have the freedom to worship, to follow any religion that they would like to, and Islam is providing them safety in the Muslim countries according to the law of the religion. According to the law of Islam, if you are a true Muslim, the first thing to do is to provide the person who follows the Christianity, Judaism, any other religion, he has to be safe in your country. And the Prophet said, I am disassociated from the person who harms any person who follows any other religion. I'm not going to be his friend. I'm not going to look at his face in the day of judgment if he harms anyone who is following any other religion. So these serious issues that we have, and so many issues are discussed in the media, unfortunately are not taken from scholars. They talk according to their own understanding. They bring some people who kill, people who destroy, an example of, because you can follow the religion as you like. The understanding of the religion is different. Some person can understand the verse in this way. That's why the Prophet did not explain the Quran, but he explained it by just his actions. He showed how we practice our life by his actions. See how he treated the non-Muslims. See how he treated his parents, his relatives, those people who used to harm him and treat him in a bad way, how he treated them, how he treated with women. What was his advice before his death? He advised to look after our women. So those serious issues that are mentioned in the media and around us that we hear all the time about Islam, we have to refer to one of the scholars. We have to ask them rather than just listening to some people. If I want to know something about Judaism, I'll go to my dear brother here to ask him. If I want to know something about Christianity, I'll go to my brother here to ask him about Christianity. But it's not fair to take information about Islam from people who do not know anything about Islam. They just look at the actions of some people and they say that's what Islam is. I can never judge a person, I can never judge a religion according to the actions of some person, of other person. I cannot say if a Christian person hits his wife, I can never say that Christianity is oriented to hit wives. I can never do that. The same for Judaism, the same for any religion.